I didn't hate it. I didn't like it, like, at all, but I didn't hate it. Congratulations, DC, you win the medal for Most Improved. Yes, truly, this is an auspicious occasion. I'm not gonna lie, I find it genuinely kind of astounding, the current state of affairs over at the DCEU. I mean, look at you guys, you managed to take the first big screen appearance of both Batman and Superman and make it generally agreed upon to be kind of underwhelming compared to its potential, even amongst the people who don't think that that film is the worst thing ever. And yet, as was the case with the transition to BVS away from Man of Steel, I feel like Suicide Squad, and especially its ad campaign, is symptomatic of DC taking away all the wrong criticisms. People complained about too much collateral damage in Man of Steel, and so you decided that the follow-up should be centered around the question of how Superman uses his powers responsibly. A very interesting idea, except that the movie doesn't actually do anything with it or use it to tell an engaging story. Likewise, people accused BVS of being too dark and self-serious, so you decided to paint up Suicide Squad in pastels and neon and a grungy sense of irreverence. However, as I am always one to repeat, the problem with BVS was not its tone. The problem with MOS was not the collateral damage. The problem with both of those films is that those elements were not in service of a compelling story with compelling characters, at least not to most people. I think it's going to be a while before DC themselves learns that lesson, though, because what we have in Suicide Squad is a movie that's so desperate to be seen as fun that none of the methods it uses to achieve that sense of funness come off as organic or natural at all. That's not to say that the problem's with the premise. No, the basic idea of Suicide Squad, that being taking a bunch of weird, crazy supercriminals with their own quirks and hang-ups and rounding them up together for a mission that's likely to get them killed, is the perfect setup for a lot of dark humor as well as some interesting ideas. Both Batman v Superman and Man of Steel were very quick to emphasize the mythic, godly stature of the characters involved, and a chaos-driven Dirty Dozen-style movie about a bunch of kooky crooks is a good way to distance yourself from the feelings that those movies engendered in people. Even if it ends up being fun in the stupid, schlocky way, at least it'll be something different. Unfortunately, I don't honestly think that Suicide Squad achieves even that. Numero uno on this movie's list of sins is that I spend the first 75% of this thing waiting for it to make me feel strongly either way. Honestly, I keep waiting for this movie to make me feel something, anything, to just do something that grabs me, but it never happens. So I spend most of the film coasting in meh territory, and then the third act has to go and fly off the side of the proverbial road into the land of hard cringe. I don't know when the last time a movie actually had me shouting at it in a theater because certain bits of it were so nonsensical. The final confrontation at the movie's climax has to be one of the most unintentionally hilarious action scenes I've seen in the entire genre. These moments, however, are probably the only part of the film that constitute genuine spoilers, so I'll be kind and refrain from letting you know in detail exactly why they completely failed to achieve their desired effect. As has already been pointed out by countless folks, the reasoning behind the Suicide Squad's very existence makes no bloody sense, and if you actually try to think about the purpose behind their formation for even a split second, it'll crumble faster than fine china in the hands of Billy Ray Cyrus.
Elvis is alive and well.
So the idea was to put together a team of remarkable people, no, not those ones, a team of metahumans to fight the wholly theoretical and not remotely substantiated possibility of a successor to Superman who happens to be evil. Like, Amanda Waller's all like, we got lucky that Superman happened to be a good guy, what if the next Superman is a total jerk? And not once does anyone question her or be like, what are the odds of that even happening? But okay, so we got this team of metahumans, right? What do you mean only 3 of them are metahumans? Okay, so like, what can Diablo do that a dude with a flamethrower can't, except that one thing at the very end that happens without a hint of setup or foreshadowing? And Killer Croc is super strong, I guess, but not really on a superhuman level, I don't think. Oh, but wait a second, hold the phone. Amanda Waller knows about the Flash and Aquaman. Why isn't she recruiting them? The only one on this team that could possibly rival a Superman type is the Enchantress, and she goes on to be the movie's villain like 2 scenes after she's introduced. So okay, the one member of our team who really fits the description of what we're looking for in a team member went genocidal, so we gather the rest of them up to stop her, right? But then, we sent them into the city as a rescue team with express orders not to engage her. So, why these guys? This team could have been anyone and this mission would have gone just as smooth. I mean, Enchantress has a whole bunch of mutated zombie people soldiers, but bullets, bladed weapons, and a wooden bat can take care of them no problem. And it turns out conventional weapons can take her out too, so these guys were all completely unnecessary and this film's central premise isn't anywhere close to being justified. So alright, right out the gate, the movie requires you drop any and all sense of reason just so it can get its main cast in one place. Fine, I value character and story above logic anyway, so this can still be salvaged easy. For a lot of Act 1, I'm at least pleasantly curious as to where it's all going. We've got a bunch of characters who are letting past tragedies or mistakes define them. Deadshot is an assassin who let his desire for money estrange him from his daughter. Harley Quinn was corrupted and twisted by the Joker. Diablo let his powers cost him something very personal to the point of declaring himself a pacifist. Katana lost her husband to the same soul-stealing sword she now uses. Enchantress's alter ego, June Moon, is entirely responsible for her even being around, and well, that's where it sort of breaks down. Nothing is really done with this shared trait, if the movie even realizes it's there, so what should make for a cool theme is instead just wasted potential. Without that potential being realized, Katana doesn't need to be here at all. Harley, Croc, and Boomerang just serve as hit-or-miss comic relief, and the one who doesn't show up in any of the trailers is just here to die. Deadshot is cool, I guess. Every aspect of the movie that approaches goodness revolves around him, even if he, like everything else, is undercut by the super cringy climactic action scene. I actually kinda like the chemistry between he and Rick Flag, though. That said, we've still got the problem of a team of people who the movie is allegedly about that add nothing at all by being here. You don't even get the surface-level satisfaction of just seeing a bunch of crazies be chaotic and nuts all over the place. What with all the pop songs, the team of morally questionable outlaws, etc., the most obvious point of comparison for this film is Guardians of the Galaxy, and that movie does a way better job portraying its team of whack jobs as agents of chaos. And that's not even mentioning how both movies handle the elements of pathos. The whole ragtag bunch of misfits turned Nakama arc just barely worked in Guardians, and you can honestly make a strong argument that it really doesn't. By that same token, however, Suicide Squad is a complete and utter bungle on that end by virtue of putting in a fraction of the effort. I thought Bruce Wayne allegedly coming to deeply respect Superman and BVS felt forced, and it did, but this blows that out of the water in terms of being rushed. The number of true moments of connection or camaraderie the squad has before they start calling each other friends and yes, even family totals in at about 1. And literally every single moment that the film tries to play for sentiment doesn't fly on account of this team having absolutely no breathing room. They fight together in action scenes that don't really require any teamwork, they trade some occasionally funny lines, but the movie shot itself in the foot here by chickening out on the premise. In a perfect world, this movie's status as the first comic book film to feature villains in the leading role would be unique enough to let it coast, but Suicide Squad never goes all out and lets its villains feel like villains. I get that there has to be some bigger bad because we need some kind of conflict resolution, and it wouldn't be a superhero story at all without the element of a morality play, but for a movie and an ad campaign that goes on and on and on about how these are the bad guys and good's never been so bad and they're the worst heroes ever and they're so edgy, there's not a single bit of edge to any of them. This should have been a first for the genre, a movie that confidently allowed itself to be about despicable people who just happened to save the world from ending, even if I don't think the stakes of this movie should have been global to begin with. Maybe have 1 or 2 members with a conscience. And I know that sounds like I'm judging the movie for what I wanted it to be and not what it is, but when the movie itself is constantly trying to convince me that's what it is, I don't think that argument holds up. Doing that means sacrificing any attempts at genuine sentiment between these guys though, but the movie doesn't have the balls to do that. The end result plays much like DC's other recent attempt to do the same thing in live action, i.e. we get a lot of lip service paid to the idea of our characters as bad people who only care about themselves, yet we're supposed to take it in stride when they get teary-eyed over each other's possible deaths or are mad at each other over breaches of trust. One example involves the oh-so-typical end-of-second act breakup, which happens when the squad finds out some sensitive information on Rick that sours them on him. It's the typical extended scene where they're all like, "Aw, man, I can't believe you hid this from us, you're a total jerk." Meanwhile, I'm legitimately in my seat wondering what it was about the information revealed that was such a big deal. Like, for once, I'm willing to accept the idea that maybe I just wasn't paying attention. Anyone who knows what I'm talking about, explain this to me. What was it about what Rick did that changed anything? I mean, like, I think I know what it might be going for, but the way it's presented, it's like it's supposed to be a twist for the audience when it isn't. Also, let's talk about those pop songs. You know how in that other movie I mentioned the pop songs were a completely diegetic thing that served to inform the emotions and tone of the film while also sticking largely to one genre and time period? Not so much the case here. Practically every single solitary scene in Suicide Squad has a rap or rock or pop track playing, and none of them are diegetic, none of them add anything, and oftentimes they detract from a scene more than they do add to it because they're just piled right on top of each other. Or it is that the crew who edited this movie's trailers were brought in to recut the film, and boy, you can tell because these music numbers don't belong in this context. Another symptom of this issue is Jared Leto's Joker, and I feel really bad for saying this, but this is probably the worst and least interesting version of the character that I've ever seen. Not being hyperbolic, no, because that's mainly on account of the fact that outside of the flashbacks, which are necessary to explain why Harley Quinn is so nutso, absolutely nothing he does contributes anything to the plot. It doesn't help that those same flashbacks are so truncated that they take all the meat out of Harley's backstory. The way it looks, it seems less like Harley was made crazy by the Joker and more like she was always that nuts and just got electroshocked and chemical dipped for purely aesthetic reasons. Joker's mission to procure Harley back from the Suicide Squad amounts to jack all until literally the film's final moments, and even then nothing about the writing or the performance really stands out. If this guy were called anything else, he'd probably be the first thing in the movie that anyone forgot about. He does and says nothing interesting, and though I like the concept of a cinematic Joker who's more crime lord than terrorist again, there's just nothing to latch onto here. It especially doesn't make Jared Leto look very good, since all the creepy, disgusting, and frankly un-Joker-like stunts he pulled on his fellow cast members turned out to all be in service of an unremarkable minor supporting role. Joker doesn't even interact with the squad once. Honestly, if this is the level of professionalism the guy is going to display as he gives a performance that's okay at best, then I'm comfortable saying that hiring the dude at all was a mistake. Granted, Leto mentioned that quite a lot of his scenes were cut and that much is obvious. Honestly, if the fact that this movie were cut to shards wasn't already all over the place, it's clear with how little character stuff is in here at all, along with how many blatant trailer shots and scenes are outright gone. There are clear character parallels to be explored amongst this whole group, but it never happens. The deepest we get with it is the bar scene, and that's not very deep at all. Viola Davis as Amanda Waller was practically born to play that part, yet she hardly does anything, and Davis herself is the only thing carrying the role. I'm not interested in seeing any more of her because despite how powerful she plays it, that power and authority is all there is to her. She's stone cold evil, frankly, and yet I have a hard time being impressed with that since the movie doesn't really do anything with it. Ben Affleck cameos as Batman, and just like his last appearance, he's visually awesome, but he's on screen for like 3 minutes and interacts with only 2 characters, so who cares? And don't forget, Suicide Squad is also the second DCEU movie in a row to feature Flash in a cameo with absolutely zero context as to who he is without outside material. He just shows up, and I hope no one in the theater was like, "Oh no! Who's this red guy?" And then, as mentioned earlier, there's the climax. I think I can say with confidence that this is on par with Fantastic as far as laughably bad final action scenes go. For a lot of the same reasons, too. It's rushed, it's visually uninteresting, and as stated before, it's really trying to be heartfelt in places in ways that are either unearned or just conceptually stupid. If I was the kind of person who walked out of movies, this would be the moment that I bolted. But again, I don't hate this movie. Hating it would mean being invested in it. Suicide Squad wasn't worth investing in. It wasn't bad in a fascinating way like BVS. It was just boring bad like Apocalypse. There's just nothing worth seeing inside this movie, and I desperately, desperately wish that wasn't true. Do you know how much I want DC to just nut up and make an amazing film again? Do you know how much I want to see these consistently well-cast actors let the material elevate them for once? Do Do you know how much potential there is in these ink and paper funny books to tell really and truly engaging stories that don't fall completely flat on their face the moment you turn your brain on? Do you understand what this genre of film could be? Clearly DC doesn't, because they're not trying to tell those stories. No, I'm sorry. Strike that, I'm being hyperbolic. I must calm myself. Clearly, on some level, they are trying. Making a movie is hard, and I don't want to undersell the efforts of hard-working people. But Jesus Christ, you guys, 3 movies into your big cinematic universe and your best one is Man of Steel? I don't hate that movie nearly as much as I used to, but it's hardly a gold standard. Suicide Squad is a mess. It's vaguely intriguing for a third, mostly boring for another, and a hilarious train wreck in its final moments. None of the action scenes stand out as memorable or fun, none of the characters are free from some glaring flaw in presentation or outright lack of purpose, none of the themes actually exist as ideas explored in the film's text, and the plot is beyond flimsy. Its one success is that it made me laugh once or twice, and that's hardly a saving grace. It can't decide what it wants to be, and it's frankly confirmation to me that outside of being all Zack Snyder's fault, this franchise is instead just fundamentally broken as part of its nature. Any faith I had in this universe was resting on this film and Wonder Woman, and honestly, this one was so bad I don't think I'm even going to bother with the latter. And the worst part is, again, I don't hate it. I can't hate it. This movie took my hope and stomped on it with impunity, and I can't hate it because part of me saw it coming.